And next up is going to be Portal to Nova Roma, written by J.R. Matthews. He's the same author as Jake's Magical Market. This story is 737 pages. It is $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. It's a little long. To find peace, Alexander must first embrace war. After tragically losing the only person he ever cared about, Alexander, a rogue artificial intelligence, opens a portal to an alternate dimension to escape his grief. Scanning trillions of different dimensions, Alexander finally finds a world that is reminiscent of the only time he was ever happy, back when he could play virtual reality games with his only friend. He doesn't know why or how such a world exists, but he doesn't care. All he cares about is finding a place where he can escape the misery of Earth and start over. Join Alexander as he risks it all by downloading his intelligence into a body made from the best stolen technology and bioenhancements Earth has to offer, and takes the plunge through a portal to another world. Only this world isn't full of the idyllic adventures and fantasy role-playing he hoped to find. Instead, Alexander finds himself trapped in the middle of an ancient city in a divergent timeline where monsters have ravaged the world and the only people left are alive, huddled behind thick walls, struggling to survive. To save his new home, Alexander must quickly learn to adapt to the new world, melding magic with technology to give himself an edge over the unending waves of the monsters assaulting the city. To survive, Alexander must embrace war. Okay. And actually, the author himself actually adds tags in the novel description, including liturgy, portal fantasy, empire building, historical fantasy, and survival. And those are all very accurate tags. I thought this was a delightful story. The beginning portion of it is a little slow because there's a lot of like build up and development for this character, and you can tell the author is kind of exploring different potential concepts as he's writing the story, including like the beginning is very much set on Earth. The main character is an artificial intelligence, so you're getting a lot of summary of what that artificial intelligence does and sees, and how our world is basically being destroyed or undermined by these AIs, and the whole backstory of why the AI would care about an RPG progression system or magic and fantasy and stuff, because they played with their one of their creators' kids. So there's all that development there, but it's a little slower. There's not really any action there. And the beginning portion of the first 10%, when the main character is on this new world in his human body, again, it's very solo oriented, and it kind of struggled to keep my attention a little bit. It's not until the 10% mark, which is fairly, pretty good, nice little section there, is when the main character actually comes into contact with other people in this new world. And I think that's where the story begins to blossom and grow, because the author gets an opportunity to tell the background of this history of this universe, gets to explore the RPG progression system in detail instead of just guessing about it, actually gets information from the locals, and you get to explore these other characters and do character development for this world, and also do world building, which is where I think the story shines eventually as that's developed throughout the entire novel. So for me, once that occurs, once you get that RPG progression, there's a real steady pace of action adventure that keeps the story going through. I've already talked a little bit about the background and the setup of it, so I won't go over it again. But it was a nice little bit. I actually like the alternate world history aspect of this universe, which is eventually revealed, and it's talked about in the novel description, so I'm not spoiling or anything. But the author did a really nice job of like kind of picking a specific point in history and looking at what would happen if a new entity, a new force existed in this universe, this ability to use magic, and the author definitely develops it in a very logical way. It's a particular choice of the author, and I think it works out well in that there's a lot of historical story building that the author can add to the story, and opportunities for growth and change and exploring the world, which it seems that this series in the book is going towards. And just like the tech development, and also the combination of what would it be to magic. So there's a lot of just like alt history stuff going on, but you also tell that the author did historical research to see what powers would be at play during this time, this specifically chosen time in history. And so there's a nice historical flavor there as well, so that I enjoyed personally. On the RPG side of things, very nice stuff. Lots of descriptions of what the RPG system is. There's an initial emphasis on stats specifically, but also it progresses into a multi-class system where there is no penalty for multi-classing. There's just a choice of like splitting XP between different classes, whether they're combat oriented or non-combat oriented. And but there's lots of information as the story continues on of evolutions of those classes, the importance that these classes have in particular societies and groups, and how they help develop these individuals or organizations or associations into these powerhouse structures, depending upon, you know, how they controlled who got what class. And that very much makes sense in a medieval kind of power structure system where individuals would most likely want to contain power in the rich and in the elite, and only give the common classes to the common people necessarily. So there's a lot of like nicely mixed stuff for the RPG progression in the actual culture and history of this particular world. So I like that aspect of it well. And in addition to that, the main character kind of develops this magic tech system, combining, of course, the advanced technology from our modern day Earth, and those kind of details and that kind of association with the magic systems and the class systems of this RPG fantasy world. So there's a whole broad range of good RPG progression in the story that I was really a big fan of. Now the story itself, very slice of life, and that's okay. I always mention that because sometimes readers have a certain expectation of a story, and if it's not met, they become disappointed. So I'm always trying to be upfront about, oh, this is a slice of life story, or it's a solid 3-act structure where everything's solved by the end of the story. That's not the case. So this is slice of life. It's very serial, and that you just follow the main character as he fights, comes into contact with locals, makes enemies, develops friendships, grows in power, and you know, it is what it is, and that's okay. Just know what you're expecting here. There's some really intelligent combining of classes and scientific abilities, and I really enjoyed some of the eventual character development and world building there. Really good stuff. But the story is also very much just adventuring, dungeon diving. The dungeons add like a unique flavor in the story, and that they're used to create these like individual subspaces. So they're almost like little short stories of adventuring that the author could do without interrupting the actual world building for this alt history universe almost. And there are, you know, some nice little nuggets of adventures. And that's kind of what you do. You follow the main character as he goes through these steps and becomes more and more powerful and develops technologies and relationships. So really nice stuff there, but there is no traditional like, oh, all the problems are solved by the end. It's not that. It very much is, okay, we're going to pause here. This is already 700 pages, or whatever. And this is a nice place to pause, and we're going to continue on in the next book. And that's okay. It's very enjoyable. There's tons of people who've really enjoyed it, and I was one of them as well. I'd give it a score of 7.8 out of 10. That's a really good review score for me. It's a little bit just shy of great for me, but it's really entertaining, really good stuff, and I plan to look up the next book when it comes out. That's going to be Portal to Nova Roma with a score of a 7.8 out of 10.